Listen to this sound. Where do you think you are right now? The Amazon rainforest? Or maybe the middle of Central Park? Well, now listen to this sound from the same place. It sounds a little bit more hectic, but still serene. So maybe we're in a busy park in California or New York. Now listen to this. This little song makes it a lot more confusing, but where do you think you are? What if I told you these sounds are actually coming from deep underground and across the world from Central Park, in Japanese subways? For over 30 years, Japan has used these sounds to manipulate the way people think. Hearing is one of the most important senses we have, but it's also probably one of the most overlooked. Our eyes are used to see giant, enticing billboards of things you should buy or do. We use our nose to smell enchanting auras being pushed out from candy shops and cafes. We touch the phone we want before we buy it, and we taste a free sample of food before we eat it. But for sound, what is there? We hear random music playing in the mall, which often actually repulses customers, or the sound of a train rushing down the tracks. But a lot of the time, what we hear isn't great, especially in crowded cities where sirens and voices join to make the world's worst mixtape. Yeah, it's bad. Of course, there's a reason why sounds aren't really used. You can look from one billboard to another with no problem. But if I play all of these sounds, it's really hard to do the other thing. You just can't hear anything. But with some coordination and foresight, it's possible to change this. And that's exactly what Japan is doing in its train stations. Japan is known for its trains. After opening up to outside influence after 250 years of isolation, the country rocketed into becoming one of the most industrialized nations in the world. With this growth, they had to transport millions of people across the country, and thus the railroads were born. Rail has since stayed as the top form of transportation due to Japan's lack of space for cars and low amount of natural resources. Every year, over 24 billion riders go on trains in a country of only 130 million, which puts 46 of Japan's stations in the list of the busiest 50 in the world. These trains have allowed Japan to be very environmentally friendly and efficient, but there's one problem with this commute.
The levels of stress and anxiety can actually increase your amount of physical and mental discomfort.
Waiting around for your train to come is really stressful. This is especially true in Japan, where workers are heavily pressured to be on time. Somewhat luckily, this philosophy also spills over to the trains, which are some of the most punctual in the world, but sometimes this pressure can be really bad. For example, one train driver in 2005 was just 90 seconds behind schedule, but he resorted to going well over the tested speed limit, causing the train to derail and crash into an apartment building, killing over 100 passengers and the driver. To address this problem, Japanese rail companies looked around the world for ways to decrease stress, but all they saw was this. No music or joy, so they had to come up with something themselves. They listened through a catalog of sounds and eventually decided to use bells and a few other instruments because they could stand out from the crowd while still not being too annoying. They created hundreds of 7-second jingles that weren't sad or overly happy, but just right, which made them have a calming effect. The jingles also kept playing until the doors in the train closed, so people now could know if they'd be able to get on the train or not, and if they were getting off, they know where they were because every station has a unique jingle, which is especially helpful for the blind. These jingles only came every few minutes though, as they came with each unloading train. So sound engineers searched for another way to fill that gap. They looked into music or the sound of waves crashing against rocks or even a river flowing, but but after doing some research, they found the best sound was of birds singing. These sounds not only reduce stress, but also increase productivity and make people happier. And Japanese train stations even use them to direct the blind to the exit. Julian Treasure, who is an audio psychologist, even suggests that you should listen to birdsong
And at least 5 minutes a day, but there is no maximum dose.
and you'll become much happier than you were before. Now people are beginning to see the impact of birds and nature on your happiness, which has created a movement for bird-friendly cities. Also, cities have begun doing what's called geo-designing, which means they build spaces to flow with nature by using things like plant terraces or park connectors like this. So don't be surprised if your city uses sound or nature to change the way that you think, even if it's fake, because it might just be good for you. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe to see when my next video comes out. Until next time, here on Sparkpass.